Hey Vicky, hey Nia, I see you. Dottie, I see you. Pray Worship Fashion, I see you. Hello Dr. Kimberly, hello Kimmy, I see you. ST3V 3000, good evening to you as well. Hello everyone. God bless each and every one of you. This is going to be a brief teaching on how I move from the spirit of from the spirit of fear into freedom. And so I just want you to go ahead, if you can, go ahead and begin to share this scope with all of your followers as well as on Twitter and Facebook. God blessings to each and every one of you. Hey Jeremy, I can see you as well. If I miss you or miss speaking to you, please forgive me. I see you, Rob Rush. You all know I need glasses and I will not get them until sometime next week. If you can hear me perfectly fine, if you can give me some hands up, we can go ahead and get started. And this scope is about the spirit of fear and how God delivered me from the spirit of fear. So I am going to share part of my testimony in regards to what happened to me about a couple of months ago and how I am now living in a life of freedom. All right, you want to get started? All right, cool beans. So we know that the spirit of fear is everywhere. Some of us have a lot of phobias. We're afraid of spiders, bees. We're afraid to speak in front of large crowds. Some of us, like me, who do not like to walk across bridges, thinking that there's a possibility they can cave in, and then you fall into the water, and because you know that you're not such a great swimmer, you're going to just drown and die. You have me, where I used to be very afraid to stand before the people to even teach. I love to activate. I can stand and pray, but it just seems like when I had to get before the people to even teach, I was afraid. Even in school, coming up in class, I can know the answer, and the teacher asked if anyone knew the answer to her question, and I would never raise my hand, all because I was afraid to even be rejected, or she'll look over me, or whatever the case may be. So these fears have been here for a very long time, but recently I realized that I had levels of fear, and Apostle began to teach on the Bow series. And one day, standing in worship, we had a worship night on a Tuesday. We had prayer, praise, and the prophetic. And I was standing there and he was teaching. And then I remember him teaching, and then I just heard God say to me, and this is going to blow a lot of you away. I heard God say to me, in service, I want you to write millionaire upon your heart. And I turned around to look for my spiritual baby to see. I'm like, did you hear that? But she had no clue what I was talking about. I'm like, did you hear that? And I was like, oh, I'm just going to brush that off or whatever have you. And I'm just going to let that just go away, because apparently this must just be, me probably overthinking it or whatever the case be, because God has always told me, 1, I will be the Joseph of my family. 2, that I would prosper, and 3, I will be first in my family. But he has never ever talked to me by way of figures. And so I was like, okay, I must be tripping today. So we go into worship. I bow before God at the altar, and I get back up, and he says, I want you to write the word millionaire upon your heart. I still ignored it. And so finally, 3 days later, I'm headed out to get my hair done, and I'm like, okay, talking to God, getting my stuff. And then I heard God says, why are you afraid to become a millionaire? And I'm like, I must be tripping, because I know I wasn't feeling well that day. And I took some medicine. So I'm thinking maybe I am just tripping in the car. So I'm like, okay, God, what is really going on? So I began to pose questions to him. But before I can ask questions, he started asking me questions. Why are you afraid to prosper? Why are you afraid to change your confession to who I have already created you to be? Before you was even placed in your mother's womb, I knew your ending before the beginning. And so you were already with me before you were even formed. So surely I know what I have established in you, and I know what your end result should be. You need to listen. So I was like, like, okay, why do you think, Kisha, you had to be born a millionaire in order for you to be one? And I'm like, why are we having this conversation? And why am I so afraid of having this conversation with God? And so he was like, you didn't have to be born in it. It's your inheritance. I created you to be a millionaire. And I'm like, but God, you never talked to me about figures before, so why are you talking to me about figures now? And so then he began to tell me, why do you think I told you to resign from your job? You thought it was just something because you didn't get a raise and you felt like that you were being overlooked. So you went home and typed up your resignation to give a 2-month notice, which most people give 2-week notice. I was given a 2-month notice because I said that I would never ever allow anyone else to dictate to me what I am worth. And if you think I'm good enough to train the people on the job, then why am I not good enough to receive a raise on this job? And I've been here 1 year. And so I got home, and I'm going to show you how these two is going to meet up. So I typed up a resignation letter, 2 months now. Did I have another job plan? I did not. I just knew that I could get another job. But I was saying to myself, God, I don't want to work anybody else's job ever again, because it seems like in this case either I am overworked and underpaid, or I have the skills and yet still don't get paid the way I want to, or it just seems like I'm at a place where I hate and yet I still have to do this because I need the money. And I was tired of just working because of money. And so I began to give my resignation letter, and my husband was like, you gave a 2-month, we already had a discussion. He still has a job. I knew we'll be still okay. We still have money, but I couldn't work there anymore. So he was like, people don't give 2 months. They give a 2-week. In my resignation, this is what I wrote. I talked about how God was expanding me and how God was giving me these products and how God was going to allow me to travel, to teach, to train, to activate people across this nation, that I may leave a legacy in the earth. Who gives that type of resignation? Usually you give a resignation saying that either you outgrown a place, you thank you for the opportunity, and you just keep moving and you leave the job and you prepare for it. But I started talking about my future without knowing that I was talking about my future. But here's the thing, I was afraid of my future. And so when I gave the resignation, 2 weeks was winding down, and I was thinking, oh my God, I gave a resignation letter. I never quit a job without having a job. And I start feeling afraid. What if I fail? What if what I see before me is greater before me, and I know that I'm in the last trimester to give birth to this great idea that you have given me, but I'm afraid to do it because I'm afraid that I might fail? What if I fall on my face? What if what I thought to be is not? What if I didn't hear you? What if I'm out of my season? So I had all these what ifs. And so when that day, then God started talking to me about write the word millionaire upon your heart. And then 3 days later, he said, why are you afraid? You need to change your confession. And when he began to talk to me about, it's not about a performance. It's about an inheritance. It's not about a platform. It's about your relationship with me. And it is not about greed or lust or you branding yourself, but it's about your assignment. I called you to teach. I called you to train. I called you to activate. I called you to build. I called you to raise up. And you can't do it sitting at your desk. So we get down to the final week of me working. Monday comes and I'm like, okay, God, you called me a millionaire. I'm leaving this job on Wednesday. The same day I am preparing to leave to go to the leadership retreat. I'm sitting at the desk. I'm training 2 new people. I'm like, they here for my spot. I thank you, God, that this chair won't be empty. We got some people that's going to do well. I'm training them. I get called upstairs by the CEO because I needed to leave early that day. Why am I working a full day when I need to go and do a half a day because there's something else I need to get done before I leave this job? So the CEO, director of operations, as well as the manager, calls me upstairs and say, I heard you want to leave and do a half a day. I said, yes, that'll be true. And before I got up there, I told God, I said, I feel like something is off. Something is not right. But since I'm fasting, set the hot coals to my lips and keep the doors of my mouth and allow me to pass this test. Because I can tell everything that is wrong, but I did not want to be a poor witness, and I did not want to be a poor testament of what Jesus Christ looks like in me as his representative. So I'm going to need you to help me with my mouth, because this tongue can be sharp. So I get upstairs. They say, I heard you want to leave early. I said that'd be true. And then, just like a big Jezebel, which I always had to come in conflict with, sat up there and said, if you want to go home early, then you got one choice here. These are your choice. This is the choice. Either do your full shift or be fired, be terminated. And I sat back in my chair and said, it looks like today I choose termination. I have never chosen to be fired. I don't even know how that even came out of my mouth. And I'm like, why are you firing me if I was already resigning on a Wednesday? Today is Monday. You telling me that you cannot allow me to stay at least 3 days because I want to do a half a day and we're not understaffed. I'm not messing with the flow of the front line. What in the world is really going on here? So we go through everything. They tell me, okay, you can go ahead and you can go home or whatever. And I'm thinking, I've just been fired. I'm texting my husband like, you won't believe I just been fired. He was like, that's stupid. That's crazy. I don't get it. So I asked God as I was leaving out, why did you allow me to get fired? I already didn't get the raise, and you knew that I was resigning. Why would you allow me to get fired? And here's what he said. If I allowed you to stay until Wednesday, you would have changed your mind and you are never going to complete the assignment that I have set before you. What? I thought I was on the right track. I thought I was okay. And I'm like, what in the world is going on? I got fired and now you're telling me that, and I did. I had some doubts because you know what? I said, I'm afraid of failing. I'm afraid of my future. I felt like this big assignment through this little vessel that's getting ready to come through this small canal. What if it just doesn't work? What if this thing died? And so God allowed me to get fired to push me on my way. So now here's the thing. I had an idea, and it's a God idea. I know it's a God idea, but it was not in the right timing. So I end up having lunch with someone you all know, Tiffany Montgomery. And I won't tell our whole story, but I had a lunch with Tiffany Montgomery, and God I was going to deny the lunch. Why? I'm an introvert. I feel very awkward when I have to sit with someone I really don't know. And I feel very awkward if I have to start a conversation first. I feel also awkward if I'm going to be in a large setting. So we was going to a restaurant. So I had an excuse. I said, I am part of a vocal audition panel this day that she wanted to do lunch. We was headed for a snowstorm. So I said, you know what, God, I think I'm just going to tell her that maybe we can do it on another day because a snowstorm is coming. And I don't want to do this. And God said, go have lunch with her. And I said, but why would she want to have lunch with me? This is a woman who many know. She has a great name in the earth. I didn't understand why she was pursuing me. I don't know what she really wants from me. And see, that's what fear does. It restricts you. It limits you. It wants you to never pursue your purpose. It never wants you to pursue your future. It wants to keep you right in the same place of stagnation. And especially those of us who grew up in poverty, we'll be afraid to prosper. We'll be afraid to grow. We're always, it's a mentality thing. And I grew up in it. I was born in poverty. So I didn't want to sit with somebody who had wealth because I felt like I didn't fit in. I don't know what she's going to ask me. I feel like I could have been uneducated. And so what if she asked me something that I did not know? But she wasn't pursuing me for business. She was looking for a relationship. And so I decided, okay, I'm going to go. God told me to go. I'm going to go and sit down. I'm going to have this lunch with this young lady. And I'm just going to get it over with. Well, lo and behold, we're talking about life. I realized that we have more in common than we didn't have in common. And that's what fear would do. It will keep you from building relationships. It'll keep you from loving. It'll keep you from wanting to receive love. It'll keep you from wanting to prosper. It'll keep you from functioning even in your gift. It'll keep you at the same rate, at the same place, at the same pace at all times. Why? Because that is a tactic of the enemy. And what fear does, it brings about agitation. It brings about this feeling and sense of danger. So you're always focusing on what the enemy is doing, whether if it's surrounding you or if it's operating in somebody else. So you're very suspicious of the person because you think it's the enemy. So the enemy torments with your mind because that's what fear does. But the Bible tells us in 2 Timothy 1:7 that God has not given us the spirit of fear, but power, love, and a sound mind. And so when you operate in fear, not only will you cut off relationships and you will not operate in your gift, but one thing you will also do is that you will always be tormented with your own thoughts. You're not going to move forward. You're not going to move backwards. You're just going to stay right there, plateau. That's it. And fear robs you of power. It robs you of your love. It robs you of your sound mind. You don't have no discipline, no self-discipline. That means you really don't even have all the fruit of the spirit because one of them is love. And so it robs you. And so when I sat down with her, I was like, oh my gosh, she's almost like a sister to me. And I sat there and then we began to talk and exchange. And then she tells me, hey, did you know you was the second person that ever imparted into me? And I'm looking at her like, what are you talking about? She was like, in Virginia, we had a conference and you laid your hands on me. And I'm like, what? Really? I'm the first? And so fear didn't even want me to sit with her. Why? Because I felt like I was out of place. Fear robs you of that. But don't you know that you were created in God's image after his likeness, and you can sit with the best of them and God will give you divine intellect. You don't have to be educated to sit with the best. God will start giving you things. Why? Because there's something in you that person needs from you too. You might need something from them and they may need something from you. Why? Because iron sharpened iron. And in this case, I needed counsel without even knowing that I needed counsel. And in the multitude of counselors, there is safety. And when I sat with her, I was safe in that moment. I began to be like me. And one thing about her, she never gives unsolicited advice. She began to ask me, what are you doing? I have your book. I'm like, okay, you have my book. And then she began to give me ideas. And then I said, you know what? I'm not hungry anymore. I pushed my plate back and then I began to take down notes. And I said, well, is it okay that I record you? And she said, yes, you can record me. She gave me an assignment and I executed the assignment. And I was able to make more in the 72 hours than I would make on my job if I was there for 7 months. So what I tell you is do not allow fear to rob you of your future, of your purpose, or of your destiny. If God is giving you something to do, execute that thing. Don't allow, for me, I was afraid of my future. I was afraid what people would say if I began to brand myself, if I began to launch out different products. I was afraid of being rejected by my own family. I was afraid to even prosper. And now I can do a few thousands, but when God started talking to me about being in the 6 figures in 1 year and being a millionaire, in the millionaire status in 5 years, it made me afraid. Why? Because I was focused on what people would say about me. But this day I come to tell you I live in freedom. And I have been moved from out of fear into freedom. I'm not allowing the enemy to restrict me. I'm not allowing the enemy to limit me. I gave those fears over to God. And I laid that thing on the altar. I told Apostle one day when he was teaching the prophets the first Sunday in December, he was teaching. And I'm like, oh my God, while I'm welling up. And then he asked me a question. I told him, I am afraid. No, I told him, all the things that God was telling me to do. And then he said, you are afraid of your future, but I have authority over that. And you need someone in your life, a leader, someone in your life who can coach you, who can walk with you, who can disciple you, who can mentor you and tell you that they have authority over the very thing that you facing because God delivered them from it. He told me he had authority over my fears. That thing broke. And from that day forward, I've been lifting up my hands in freedom. And I told that devil, devil. I don't care what I was born in. I am not what I was born in. I am delivered. And the God that I serve created me in his image and after his likeness. And he said, therefore, if any man be in Christ, he is a new creature. Old things have passed away, and behold, all things become new. And I don't care about what my debts say today, because I believe in 2017 I'll be debt free. And some people say, oh, you shared your testimony about what God told you about being a millionaire. Don't let these church folk or these religious people keep you bound in regards to what God has said to you. Some people say, because you know, people, the enemy will come in and then people start praying against it. You can't stop me from prospering. Only person can stop me from prospering is myself. That's the only person that can stop me. You can try to curse it, but I sit under someone who has authority than more than myself, that can break any curse that anyone can speak out of their mouth. You can't curse what God is blessing. And so I'm not afraid to tell you that you will see me from nation to nation. I'll be teaching, training, activating, discipling, mentoring, whatever God told me to do, I am going to do it, and I'm not going to be afraid. I'm not going to let people keep me in a box and be afraid to do the very thing that God has called me to do. So I say to you, don't be afraid. God is with you. Are you still here? Yeah, you still here. That thing was frozen. Is it still frozen? Oh, I don't see no movement. I can't tell if it's still frozen. If it's frozen, let me know. I can always start a second part. Because I don't see nothing moving. Okay. So I understand that it's not frozen. All right, because I can't see anything. I don't see no comments. I don't see anything. So I encourage you today, don't allow fear to rob you of your power, your love, and your sound mind. And do not allow the enemy to tell you that you can't build new relationships. Don't allow the enemy to rob you of your gift, making sure that you can continue to keep it stirred the way Timothy did in 2 Timothy 1:7. So you can still stir your gift. You can be trained in your gift. You can be delivered from every soul issue. Do not allow fear to even rob you of your prosperity. God called us to prosper. He takes pleasure in us prospering as he does for himself. He became poor that we may become rich. Only the thief comes in to steal, to kill, and to destroy. The enemy never changes his position, so you should not change yours in God. The enemy, he comes in, he is a robber, he is a murderer, and he is a destroyer. But it's God that gives us increase. It is God who hardens us to difficulties. It is God who is always with us. It is God that we can cast all of our cares, including our fears, and he will deliver us. Father, our Father, which is in heaven, he hears the righteous when they pray, and he answers them and delivers them from all of their troubles. So if fear is an issue that you have on today, God is there. The only fear we should have is the reverence of God. And that means to say unto him, I hold you in high regard. I find you worthy. I will never dishonor you. I will never disrespect you. I humble myself before you because you are worthy of the cause. That's the only fear we have, is the fear of the Lord. Anything outside of that would try to hold us bound to old systems, old people. Some of us even afraid to even walk out of old systems such as churches because of why people curse you and tell you if you lead a church that you will never prosper, your children won't prosper, all of these things. You will never be identified in your gift. You won't be trained. You can't do nothing without them. Even with relationships, men will tell you You are nothing without me. All that stuff is foolishness. Let me tell you, God is faithful to deliver. He's not a liar. If he tells you something, you can bank on it. All of his promises towards you are yes, and they are amen. He's not a liar. He will fulfill his promise, but you have to do the work. And here's the thing. I didn't have to get in anybody's deliverance line, and nobody had to say, come out. I made a decision not to be in fear anymore, and I started applying the word, because sometimes we'll speak the word, but our heart doesn't line up with it. And then there are times when you don't even know that those fears are in you until God started bringing it to the surface. So I say to you, do not be afraid to do what God has called you to do. You don't want to do it outside of timing. Of course, he's going to give you a plan. He's a God of structure. He's a God of order. But do